welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. I promised you part two with the amazing Sandra Thompson, and here we are ready to delve further into emotional intelligence. It was such a great episode, so much great feedback. We've spun it round quickly, and here we are again. And it's an auspicious day for Get Out of Rap today because we are now 5 years the podcast has been going. So thanks to everyone for all your support and listening. And Sandra, welcome again.
Thank you. Now, just to give you the full effect of,
Wow.
look at that, 5 years. This is other brands are available. Cecil from Waitrose. So I'm
Wow.
inviting you to blow the candles out.
You're so kind. Here we go. Ready?
Here we go. Ready, steady, go. My trusty assistant will now go and distribute the cake.
Thank you very much. That is a lovely, lovely touch.
Thank you. Well, do you know, when I saw this morning on LinkedIn that you were 5 years old and we were doing this stuff, I just thought, do you know, that would be an excellent. I think he's always wanted fame. It's embarrassing. Right, okay, goodbye. He works in IT. You'd never know. We might need to edit some of that out. Anyway, so congratulations on 5 years. How do you
feel? It's kind of blown my mind a little bit if I think back to what's changed in that 5 years. I guess the most poignant one is my first guest was Mia reluctantly just to let me test recording really, but she was hilarious. And now she's working with me one day a week she was 12 then, 17 now. And I think for all of us, you know, that period 2019 to now has been so bizarre, predominantly because of the pandemic. I think it's bent our concept of time. It seems like only yesterday I was doing the first one. And yeah, very, you know, even from if you fast forward to your first one a week or so ago, I came away from that buzzing. I just learned so much and so many lovely messages that what you shared has helped people. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was to give people a platform that I know are amazing, and to share, and for all of us to kind of grow. So yeah, very, very special. And the cake was a lovely touch.
I would put it in the post to you, but I have a funny feeling that Hugo will get to it first, and that would be bad news because it's chocolate.
Yes, so feel free, distribute accordingly.
So where shall we pick up then on emotional intelligence? So I wonder if there are any comments or any questions that anyone raised with you that we might cover off first off. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great shout, actually. One of the things that came up in the team leader community, and people loved it, by the way, but one of the things that came up I could absolutely relate to, and that was I can distinctly remember it wasn't necessarily when I was a team leader because I was in my team, you know, and I'd like to think I was quite good at sensing how people were, and we didn't have the terminology emotional intelligence, but I'd like to think that I was a good people person and sensitive to feelings or even unspoken stuff. It was only when I became a contact center manager responsible for team leaders that I noticed, not many, but a couple of my leaders, sometimes in their interactions, I would wince because they just felt so clunky and maybe a bit harsh. And they weren't those people. They weren't that type of person. Just how they were communicating with their team felt a bit clunky. And it relates to this question that came up in the community, was how, if you don't feel that you naturally possess that kind of some of the aspects of a good foundation of emotional intelligence, how can you get better at it? You know, and I guess even asking that question demonstrates that they've got self-awareness.
That's right.
But where would people, and you gave some great resources on the end of part one, but what would you say to people that either they recognize it themselves, or perhaps there's people in their teams where you think, you know what, I'd love to give this person an injection of Sandra and emotional intelligence superpowers.
Mm. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think if someone can perceive that there's something missing or they're not quite hitting the mark, then that's phenomenal. Those people that have absolutely no idea how they're showing up and have absolutely no idea of the consequences of what they're doing, that's a different ball game. So I think that one of the first things that people can do is to invite feedback. And I don't think we covered this the last time, but feedback is interesting because depending on who you ask, you obviously get their version based on their biases of what they experienced from you. And so some people might be perfectly comfortable with you being completely blunt, and others just are not. And so I think the invitation here is to pinpoint a number of different personality types and ask them the same question. And it might be, I was in this meeting on such and such a day. This is how I think I saw how I showed up. What was your experience of that? Which is an open question. And it also gives them permission to work out where you're going, because there's nothing worse than someone saying, could you just give me some feedback? Because you're thinking, do they think they've done a good job? Do they think they've done a bad job? What do, you know? So that's a very safe way of kind of spelling out what your position is on it and asking people to reflect their experience of you. And from that, you can decide whether that is how you want to show up or not. That's one thing. The second thing, which I really love, is scenarios. So you consciously deciding that if everything goes a bit wobbly, how are you going to show up in that moment where everyone around you is panicking? What would be of service to the people around you and what would make you the most productive? So I'm going to give you an exact example. Worked in the airline industry. I worked in marketing. And whenever, so I didn't work for British Airways, I worked for British Midland, which is now part of British Airways. But at the time, if BA announced something, everyone would be running around like crazy birds because we were like, right, what are we going to do? Well, this is what, because they sometimes we had absolutely no inkling of what they were going to do. And I remember distinctly waiting for an instruction because I wasn't very senior at that point, and just watching how people responded to that. There were some, I remember very distinctly, very calmly, very matter of fact, this is what we're going to do. Da, 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 da. And others were, I mean, honestly, it's like a Benny Hill show. And I know what I preferred because I was clear on what I needed to do. And so I imagine those people decided how they wanted to show up and they remembered that leaders automatically are a magnet for everyone who works for them when the what's it hits the fan. So they consciously decided how they were going to show up, and what a surprise, they got better productivity. So I think the first point is feedback, invite it, be ready for it, make your judgment as to whether it's sincere or not. That will be kind of, you'll get into a habit and understand those people who have just got their own agenda and those who are purely there to help you. And then consciously decide, in this scenario, if someone's being aggressive, in this scenario where it might be conflict, in this scenario where we've got to act really fast, how do I want to do it? And just keep practicing, because I've been studying emotional intelligence for a long time and I've been a coach for a long time, but I still don't get it right.
Mm,
But I
mm.
still practice new techniques, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But that's good because we're trying, right?
I love it. Love it. And just starting with feedback, it's such a crucial area, isn't it? In the and you verbalized it really well. And then leading into those moments of, it might not even be crisis, but one thing we can be certain of in the contact center customer experience world is there's going to be hectic moments and they're going to be regular.
Yeah.
And perhaps if you've invited feedback, you're able to really think about your methodology of communication and your presence as a leader in those moments. I was lucky that I had a group of team leaders that were reporting into me at this point that were we had a really nice dynamic that they felt comfortable giving me unasked for feedback just on how best I could lead them. We had a lot of mutual respect. And you might not be surprised to know that I sometimes have a tendency to use too many words or maybe I likened it to sometimes people want you to go on the M1 and with a communication, and I would take every B road possible, very scenic, very pleasant, but wasn't actually getting to the destination. So the feedback was, you know, especially when it's important, and that could be both positive and negative, we need a bit more clarity. And we, like a lot of places, there was a time where I was informed first that we were going to need to be restructuring, and I can remember their feedback. They do not want story time with Martin, and a positive tinge on things. They just want to know what they need to know, and I need to give them the space to do it. But that all came about from this feedback, or not authority. We'd given ourselves agency to feedback like that, and for some they didn't mind the meandering. For others, they did not like it at all.
Yeah.
So uh, it's fascinating.
So I want to offer up a couple of other things actually, and I talk to businesses about this. Um, the formal language for what I'm about to describe is called a psychological contract. Um, the everyday language, which isn't academic, is expectations management. So I remember starting in another job. Crikey, I've had so many when I was employed, and my boss's boss took me to one side and said, "I'd like to have a meeting with you about um, mine and your our expectations of each other." And I'd never had that before. And it was utterly brilliant because she
Mm,
basically laid out how she wanted me to show up in my communication with her. And when I was generally communicating and generally doing my job, these were the things I needed to let her know about. She didn't care about the other stuff because that was fine. But these were the things. Now, when you think about relationships, you often kind of you go along and you find things a bit annoying and you like whatever. But if you're quite upfront in a work relationship and say, when you do these things, it drives me absolutely bananas. When you do these things, I'm gonna love it, and give exact examples of when it comes to life, this is really not rocket science, but it saves time, it avoids conflict, and it means you've got an agreement on how you're going to show up on
mm,
both sides. This
mm,
is not a boss telling an employee, this is what you got to do. This is also my turn to say to her, right, so I want to be challenged. And while I might make a face when you give me a really difficult job to do, I want it. I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to deliver? So don't be put off when I make a grimace. It's because of this. And I expect you to have my back. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to learn. I'm not going to do it again. But if you chastise me or you do, you punish me in some way, I'm not touching that, and I'm not going to be able to do all the great stuff. I didn't put it like that because she was very senior. But isn't that incredible?
yeah.
Because you're giving that other person the power and the opportunity to just say it. Now, of course, that assumes that someone has the confidence to do that, but it's the leader's job to say, I really want to have this conversation with you. And I've invited students I've taught to say to their bosses, because they were doing part time work, your boss might be taken aback by the fact that you're introducing this concept and you're saying to them, I'd like to have an expectations conversation. They might think, who the hell do you think you are? But won't that be incredible? Because they'll get better performance out of you. So, psychological contract, stroke, expectations management, it is a beaut.
This is very reassuring to hear because I guess by accident, as I got more experienced and moved around different teams, the first thing, maybe the first or second, the first thing was try and get to know your team. But the very early on, I would have a meeting around expectations, and that would be I would start with what you could expect from me. Now, if I'd already been working in the company, they had a perception of me as I like to mess about. It was always fun. Um,
I don't believe
however,
it. I don't believe it,
but
Martin.
however, the, within the expectation setting, I was able to talk to them and said, "Look, we have fun because I've got some like 3-line whips, and I hold my team accountable to them. So here's what I expect from you." And it wasn't anything out of the norm, but it was important for me to verbalize it, because I said, if you don't do these things, I will not be the joker. I'll be
Mm,
annoyed.
yeah,
Equally, here's what you can expect from me, and that was, I'm going to champion your career. I'm going to make work fun. Blah blah blah. Um, and it even got to the point where I would explain about my face. So I've got an expressive face.
okay,
So I, again, because of feedback, I got told I would get questioned all the time. Are you annoyed? Are you annoyed? And but that is, and I coined it my thinking face.
right,
So
yeah,
I'm not annoyed in the slightest. I'm thinking maybe it's I wasn't always great with the financials and numbers. I really had to, you know, focus on that a lot, and it kind of it taxed me. But it came across as maybe I looked annoyed
yeah,
when they were expecting smiles and high fives or whatever, which is a normal setting. And it got to that level, and it just made things so much easier when you'd had that kind of, that, like you said, that kind of psychological contract, you said, like
yeah, that's right.
expectations setting. So it's
Yeah.
reassuring to hear it coming from an expert.
Well, because it happened to me and I thought it was refreshing, it really, I pass it on. And I think when we relate that to emotional intelligence, this is self-management. This is
Mm,
the opportunity to get your emotions in check, to balance them, because ultimately, unless you've invested a whole bunch of time and you've really had a proper conversation with me, you don't know what I'm like. You don't know whether I've had a bad experience in this one thing, and that's why when you ask me to do that thing, you're not going to know the reason why I'm suddenly avoiding it or procrastinating or angry that you've given it to me. And so when humans are a bit upfront, when they are able to share, it means that both humans are managing proactively how they show up. It's, and the great thing about that is another one of the competencies is called um, positive outlook. Now, this is all about resilience. This is about it's the work of, partly the work of Martin Seligman that also brought this to life, which was around, if you are able to think positively, so if you feel comfortable, if you feel confident, then you're hopeful. So you're going to bounce back quicker if you are in that state. Some people take a lot longer to bounce back. They will bounce back eventually, but it takes them a long time. So he did a whole bunch of research with the US Army from memory, and that's also what you want. So when you get feedback and you don't feel too brilliant about it, knowing that someone's got your back, knowing that they're your cheerleader, they want you to progress, should mean you have higher positive outlook, which also means you brush yourself down and then you go again. So when you're practicing emotional self-awareness, so you're aware of your emotions, the beautiful thing about the self-management bit is all about choice. You choose how you show up. You choose how you react. Now, of course, I can't speak for every single scenario, but in the majority of cases, if we paused for a minute and just let our amygdala, so remember, I may have said last time, there's a chimp in the middle
mm,
of your
you
brain and it
did,
goes
yeah.
berserk. Yeah. So if you choose to regulate your breathing, take a moment, get up from your chair, have a walk around, go on to something else, go and get a cup of tea, glass of water, whatever it is, breathe, then you are better in making a more productive and positive response to something. I can't remember if I mentioned last time, but there's an amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's all about a gentleman's experience of something quite horrific. But he talks about this space and how humans, as one species, have the choice between stimulus and response. And if we do that work there, again, when you are receiving feedback, you might flip your beans and go, that is not how I meant to be, or you must have been talking about someone else. Or you listen patiently and you wait for them to finish and you thank them. And then you go away and process it. And then when you've processed it, you might go and ask them some more questions. But if you react really badly to that feedback, chances are when you ask them next time, they're going to say, oh, I don't think so. Or they'll be very different in how they give you feedback, which is not what you want.
I love this concept of the stimulus and the response, and working with yourself on making sure that that time is adequate for you to be able to feel more confident, hopeful, resilient. And I wonder, from your point of view, then, if you're leading someone who you know has literally no gap between the two, and you know that might make you tentative about, oh, I've got to deliver some feedback or potentially challenging information to this team member, and I know that they're going to react. How best to manage that?
It's a great question. And I've got some really hardline practical advice. So when I did manage people, I would say, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to give you some information. This information is meant with great intention. And this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you this piece of information, and then I'm going to ask you to wait. You can either leave the room and come back in 5 minutes. You can sit quietly and breathe. You can make a few notes on your pad. You can count to 20, but we need a gap, because I know the way your brain works is the same as how my brain works. Things move around really quickly, and you're just going to need a bit of time to process it. How do you feel about that? Well, it depends what you're going to tell me, or whatever it might be. Well, I need you to promise me that that's what we're going to do. And this is the new approach that I'm trying. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. But there's going to be a much better result when we follow these steps. Then you deliver it, and I'll say, I've finished giving you that feedback. Now is your invitation either to go and have a walk, go and get a cup of tea, come back, sit here for 20 seconds, whatever you want to do. That might work with some personality types. It might not work with others. Another approach you might take is inviting them to go back to the thing that you are going to give them feedback about. And you're inviting them to assess how they thought it went or what they observed. And they may come up with something, or as to your point, they have absolutely no self-awareness. Then they describe it, so they're there, they can imagine that time. And then you say, okay, now I'm going to give you my perception of what I think happened, and I'd like you to respond to that when you're ready. But this needs to be a careful conversation, because we both want you to do even better. Because I know that it's possible, because I've seen you do, which have been fantastic. So again, you're not saying you're rubbish and blah, blah, blah. You're reminding them that they do really great stuff. And the final point to this, which isn't what you'd say to them, is we are not our behavior. We're not. Our behavior is a result of a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with us. So, as I've said, one, you spell out exactly what you're going to talk about. You invite them to pause. Second, you ask them to relive it. And then you offer up the thing, but making the point that they do so many things that are great. This is an opportunity to grow. We are going to work it out. So you don't put them out. It's not like you're hanging them out to dry. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. I wish I'd had these techniques managing directly in contact centers, because I can remember one great member of the team. I say great, real character, but no fuse. It wasn't even a short fuse. It was no fuse. And some of the behaviors had resulted in me needing HR. It was that it was, we were progressing down. We were on a formal
Right.
route, and we were going to a meeting, and the HR manager who was coming with me, she said, "Oh, you're wearing normal clothes." I said, "Yeah," and she said, "I thought you would have come in with a suit of armor." And it was because the pattern that would happen would be deliver what we had to deliver, try and have a conversation about it, but it was just lost in a big explosion.
Yeah.
Then some time would pass, and then the team member would come back afterwards when they had calmed down. So it was like they were at the thinking time was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So they'd come back afterwards and say, "I'm sorry. Now I need to," and at that point you could start to talk about, hey, look, just the behaviors and things, and where you have this in your mind as a priority. It's either an indication that there's other things going on, because it
Mm,
really doesn't warrant the response to be
yeah.
so extreme. But these aren't behaviors that we can live with and just keep repeating.
Mm,
Now that did have some impact, but I wish I'd thought about that kind of delivery. So you've got this package of information, the response from the person, that in itself is a little coaching session right there.
mm. So let me just understand. Did this person repeatedly behave in a way that wasn't quite right?
Yeah, because it was kind of like quite cyclical, that they would be getting in trouble makes it is too black and white, but there would
Yeah,
be trigger points, whether that was lateness or behavior or performance. So there would always be something. However, a wonderful human being, it's like you say, your behavior is not the person.
that's right.
So it was a great culture. So it was very much about working with everyone and trying to help everyone get
Mm.
better. But what that meant was it was hard work.
So, so I hear what you're saying. I think the final thing to offer up then is when the calm human is thoughtful and funny, or not funny, but thoughtful and considerate and all that kind of great stuff, they will they will feel a sense of responsibility with what I'm about to tell you. So, and I think a lot of people have started using this or a version of this. So, the situation, the behavior, but then the impact.
Mm,
And you may have used this, but not realized
mm,
that it was a model that you were following through. So, person A is on the phone to a customer and swears at them. So first of all, at this time, you're on the phone to the customer. Behavior, you swore at them, which we don't have a policy for. The impact is your peers are shocked and put off their call. The customer is now going to escalate that quite rightly. And this is the impact it's having on the company. So this act has a massive ripple effect. What can we do to ensure that doesn't happen again?
mm,
So I think again, you know, if that doesn't work, that, and I know we know that when someone's triggered, they're not thinking logically, but even giving them some kind of cue or an anchor. So if you gave them something that could sit on their desk, which is like a volcano, which is a model of a volcano, which might be Lego, the next time someone winds you right up, please grab the volcano Lego and just stop for a minute because that volcano Lego is going to take you back to the conversation we had about the impact of what you do.
Mm,
You do
mm.
need some of these anchors to take them back to the conversation, because otherwise they're seeing red and memory
Yeah.
goes.
The horse is bolted. It's not, it's gone technically blind.
You got it in one. Yeah, that's right. And so these techniques of self-management, so breathing, receiving feedback, choosing what is helpful to you, that stimulus and response, and reflection. As a team, perhaps team leaders might have a session where they're feeding back all the amazing stuff that people have done, remembering that recognition is so important. And I know so many contact centers do this so incredibly well, but to have just even 5, 7 minutes, super quick, high energy
Yeah.
relating to that,
Mm,
the positive reinforcement is, as I know far more significant for humans than the continual reprimand. It leads
mm,
to a lack of psychological safety, and that's a slippery, slidey slope.
mm. It's interesting. You said something then about reflection. I was going to ask your take on this. It's just over 10 years ago, but I worked in Turkey, in several contact centers in Istanbul and also in the east of Turkey. The majority of the ones I went to, something struck me as strange on the agents' desks, and that was a high proportion of them had mirrors. And I asked one of the contact center leaders in one of them that I was in, doing some work with them on a project, and he said it's surprising how they might not look at it every day, or they do because, but just not from a work point of view, but just to see if they're looking okay.
Yeah,
But he said it's surprising how if you prompt someone to look at themselves when they're maybe losing their temper with a customer, it stops them, or it calms them down because they don't
all right.
like how they look
Wow.
when they're being angry. It's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting, and I have never heard that. I've never heard that before. That's a great idea. The other thing you could do, and I say this lightly because I know it works, but some people who are listening to this will be like, "Get a life." If you put a pencil in your mouth, it forces you to grin. Have you heard that one
I'm going
before?
to try it.
There you go. And when you're grinning, because of
Yeah,
the incredible number of muscles that we've got in our mouths, the way what studies have said is that because you're grinning, it fools your brain to calm down a bit. Now, I
yeah,
haven't tried that technique myself because I'm too busy wanting to throw a pencil, not stick one in my mouth. But hey, try anything.
yeah.
Everyone's different, right?
Well, isn't there a trigger as well linked to that, that if you act happy, you become happy?
Tell me a bit more about that, because I'm 50-50 on that one.
So I've read somewhere that happiness is the output. So maybe if you're, and I guess the context and there's lots of variables here, but if you and to a certain extent, I think in leadership roles, I can remember being told it was like, oh, I can't remember the character's name, but it was Barbara Windsor when she was in EastEnders.
Oh, right.
Uh, my manager said to me, behind when she's not serving in the old Vic, there's all hell breaking loose. But the moment she steps to the bar and she's doing her job, she's, hiya, love, what can I get you? And it's all, so there's an element, that was kind of shared with me as a young leader about, you have a responsibility to behave and show up in a certain way when you're leading your team,
Yeah.
even if you're not feeling it yourself. And it was that, but then again, this part was quite recent that I read, and I'll have to find it. But you standing standing a bit taller, trying to smile a bit more, and that just by those acts, you will feel happier. So you might not have started that way, but the acts of happiness then lead to real happiness. So I like you, I'm not kind of um wholly convinced, but
So I'm going to respond to that in a number of ways. The first thing is when people fake happiness in company, quite a lot of people are going to spot it
yeah,
because we're wired to be hypersensitive to that sort of stuff. So I think that I'd rather give you two techniques that might shake off something not so good.
nice. Yeah, this is good.
So I got taught this a little while ago, actually, which I thought was brilliant. So imagine you're a zebra for those that are joining us from the States, and you have a proper shake. I mean, you might want to do
Yeah.
that in private, but literally you shake. You're moving around, you're shaking all your body, and that moves things around. And we can see when dogs are really stressed and they want to get into the next phase, they have a good old shake. Zebras, when they've been almost hunted, they have a shake and then they're back to drinking the water. Lovely, lovely. And I think that there's definitely something about moving the hormones,
Mm,
the chemicals on,
mm.
which will be more effective than telling yourself, be happy.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I'll
yeah,
be
yeah.
happy. The second thing is gratitude. And this is definitely, it's been proven to top trump anxiety. But I know that when I write gratitude diary, or even write 10 things now that you're grateful for, it it does move me in a
Mm.
way of calm resolve, and then I'm ready to feel more happy. So it's not the happiness bit,
Yeah,
but it's definitely
yeah.
taking that other bit out of the way. So spending even 2 minutes, what are you grateful for? The tiniest acts, the tiniest things.
Mm,
Someone finding me some candles.
mm.
I'm grateful for the fact that I've got a sidekick. I'm grateful for the fact that I managed to make this on time. I'm grateful for the fact the sun has been shining today. They can be the tiniest of things. I'm grateful that the bus turned up, and I'm grateful that it didn't drive in the puddle right in front of me, because otherwise my white suit would have turned into something brown. Do you know what I mean? You can have
Yeah,
fun with this,
yeah.
but gratitude will always top trump anxiety. And so I'm not sure about the whole faking it bit, but I do think that being a zebra and writing some lists of things definitely will take you on the right course.
And I think they're great tips to give people that they can implement with their team straight away. I'm sure those that are listening that have worked in the sales part of contact centers would often have, I know I would do it myself. We would have periods where we stood up. And if you noticed your team mood was a bit low and maybe we hadn't got so many sales in a certain period, we all just stood up.
Yeah,
Well, we said, right, everyone stand up, no one's sitting down. We might throw a ball around. And, it definitely had that zebra effect. So I love the zebra one. And the gratitude one, I noticed that even this morning. You know what it's like when you're plowing a lone farrow in the business world, your furrow rather. You are hit by all kinds of you think you're going to have an opportunity to work with someone, then it's taken away at the last minute, so you're a bit low. But writing the post this morning about 5 years, and just friendships that I've made, some of the lovely messages people send, just being able to relive Mia's first little recording. I was like, I am so grateful that I'm part of this, and
yeah.
instantly this morning, I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm loving it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, they might not be work related, they might be home related, they're personal to you,
Mm,
honestly.
mm,
And with some people I've coached in the past, my invitation to them is to write at the end of the day, and they'll say, just 2 minutes, just do it for 2 minutes. And then I'll speak to them after that session, and they'll say, I spent 20 minutes because honestly, I completely lost all what's the word I'm looking for? They just weren't present enough
mm,
to really think about all the glorious things that had happened. I mean, they were
mm,
having a terrible time, but
mm.
all of these glorious things, that's it. I know. Well, I'll wake up tomorrow. They'll the old toxins will be released and that'll be all lovely. And I'm ready to go because that list will be ready for you in the morning to remind you yet again.
Is it important to commit to either writing it or typing it?
So it depends which academic paper you read. The one that I really liked is writing rather than typing, because apparently the process of you considering the words, because you will consider what you're going to write, and then the messages are going down your hand and you write the thing down. The texture of putting something to paper apparently is more meaningful than you typing it. And I haven't read enough papers to say, well, actually, when we weigh it up, it's all rubbish, because you think, well, actually, if I'm thinking it, then I'm going to type
Mm,
it. But there's something
mm,
about the 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 actual act of writing out the words on paper that does create more meaning and greater purpose in that act.
mm.
Now you said that, I'm going to have to dig it out.
Well, I just wondered as well whether it's the action. So you don't just say to your team member, "I want you to spend a couple of minutes thinking about the things that you're grateful for." They've got to. It's better to say,
Yes,
"I want you to write them out,"
that's it.
even if it's only two.
Even if it's only two, but I can bet you £50 that they'll be thinking about it for the rest of the day in little moments,
Mm,
and it won't leave them, honestly. And
mm,
I think, with some of the people that I've met, I would give them a book. So again, they might not have the inkling or the resources to invest in something that's decent to write in, because that's another part of the process is you've got
mm.
a really beautiful thing that you're writing in. And so so a couple of weeks ago, I went and did a session with a group of people, and I got them lovely books with their names on them. They're all personalized and stuff. And so again, it's that I'm investing in myself. This is a thing, and I'm going to do it. So there's all sorts of techniques that people can just try. It might not be for them, but if they give it a go, that's growth mindset.
I love it, and I'm very very grateful both for getting to know you and listening to you talk. I'm very grateful for the lovely touch of the cake. Um, and perhaps then, because we've done this again, we need to have a part three.
Oh my gosh. There'll be no cake that time,
Okay.
Martin, because I really do. I really have to start getting strict so I can achieve the heights that you've got to with your fitness regime. No more chocolate, maybe a banana or an apple or something.
Yeah.
It's been splendid. I love your energy. I love your positivity. You're a force to reckon with, but in that kind of gentle, playful, slightly impish, not quite sure what you're going to get kind of way. And it's a joy in this industry. So thank you for having me on again.
Well,
And
straight back at you.
yeah,
So
okay.
is that a yes for then part three?
Let's see what your listeners say. If your listeners say I've got more questions, or they say don't get her on again, crikey, then let's see. Let the public vote.
Yes. Brilliant. Sandra,
Thank
thank you
you,
so much again for coming on.
of course, and thank you for having me. And have a great rest of your fifth birthday,
I will. Thank you very much. All the best.
and you.